Welcome to Lead Speak, the podcast where school-based speech-language pathologists come together to grow, connect, and lead with intention. In this special Season 3 finale, we're reflecting on a powerful season of bold insights, innovative strategies, and vulnerable conversations that challenge how we define leadership in our field. From a therapy room to team meetings to district-wide systems, this season reminded us that leadership isn't a title, it's a practice. We're diving into what it means to design leadership, to build cultures that retain talent, to make values visible, and to move from inspiration to infrastructure. As we look ahead to a special project in 2026, we're inviting you to keep this movement growing. If you've ever led with heart or tried to reimagine what's possible, or even champion change on your campus, this season is for you. Be sure to rate, follow, and like this episode, and share it with someone who's ready to influence the future of our profession. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the wrap-up episode of Lead Speak Season 3. Judy, I'm so excited to spend this morning with you. It's been a minute since we last recorded our episodes.
Yeah, we've been busy, but we're happy to be here and happy to be thinking about all of the great conversations we had during Season 3.
You know, when you and I started talking about starting a podcast well over a year ago now, I had never imagined that creating this podcast from nothing through some YouTube videos and talking to some friends who've had created podcasts, I never thought that it would take us on different adventures near and far. I mean, this year we went over to the great state of Ohio and had a chance to spend time with their organization called OSpeak and do a really great session on leadership and communication coaching through the lens of everything we've been talking about in Lead Speak, which is super, super cool. And then this fall, we spent some time here in Houston at the Region 4 Educational Support Center. And again, one of the sessions that we got to host was using all this great knowledge that we've gained through our speakers over the last 3 seasons and talk with local speech-language pathologists and SLP assistants about what does it mean to be a leader and like where do you get started if you're wanting to influence change. So this is super cool, right?
Very cool. Very cool. And so many interesting, smart, passionate, powerhouse professionals that we've had the opportunity to intersect with, and we'll keep following them and cheering them on and inviting them back for more conversation on Lead Speak.
Yeah, it's been super cool to be out and about and meeting listeners to the podcast and hearing about their success stories that they've gained from different episodes. You know, everything from big mindset shifts to how they're showing up at work, whether they're leading a caseload or whether they're leading an apartment, all the way to really kind of like very tactile, pragmatic solutions to tackle individual barriers ahead of them to make a change for themselves and for others. So that's been incredibly rewarding.
And it's just so affirming because the purpose of this podcast is to provide big ideas as well as skills that we can all learn that improve SLP leadership in schools. So yay, it's working.
So if you're not already following this podcast, we would love for you to hit that follow or like button so that whenever we do start to produce Season 4 of Lead Speak, those can land right wherever you listen to your podcasts. I bet that you know somebody in your life that could definitely use some encouragement and some inspiration to lead where they are. And so we would be super appreciative of you sharing your favorite episode with them, or even sending them this episode as an intro to the Lead Speak podcast series, because the more that we can get the word out there, the more of an impact that we can make for the students that we work with, the colleagues that we support, and really the systems that we inhabit. So that's super cool. We do want to kick off the podcast with some pretty big news, right, Judy?
That's right. Give it to us.
So this year, the Lead Speak podcast has been invited to do the keynote address at the Texas Speech Language Hearing Association annual convention in February in Fort Worth. So we are super excited, very honored to go to Fort Worth in February at the TSHA annual convention and kick off the big celebration, the big party that is the TSHA annual convention with a keynote on all things connection and internet intentionality that we've been working on for the last 3 seasons. So I'm very excited. Truth be told, you know that emoji, Judy? It's probably my favorite emoji on my keyboard, but it's like the emoji of the smiley face, but it's not really smiley. It's like the mouth is like, you know, horizontal across and you just see teeth where you're like, I'm excited, but I'm also kind of nervous. That's where I feel most days thinking about talking to an audience of 1,000 plus people. So, but I'm super tickled to be doing that and sharing the stage with you, Judy.
Yeah, I'm excited, intimidated, wondering if we'll be able to pull this off, but knowing at the same time that we will be able to pull it off because it's a room full of our favorite speech language pathologists and audiologists. So we're looking forward to good things. What do you think? Should we say the title of the presentation?
Yes, I think we should. So, we were trying to encapsulate 3 seasons of Lead Speak and everything that we've learned, but also be super cognizant of what we're hearing from SLPs and audiologists throughout the state of Texas and beyond, as far as like what are some of the challenges that they're facing and all the practice settings that they're working in, right? And TSHA is not just for school-based practitioners, right? TSHA welcomes practitioners from all settings. So we got to come up 10,000 feet a little bit to find trends and themes for everybody. But the title that we landed upon for the keynote this year is Welcome Home, where your first hello grows the TSHA constellation. And if you know anything about Texas, and quick story, when I moved to Texas when I was in elementary school, one of the very first songs that I learned for Go Texas Day was The Stars at Night. Do you know that song? Yes, I didn't know that song, but here in Texas, it's a Lone Star state. There's a lot of star analogy, and we know that at TSHA, one of the really great things is it's one of the largest state associations across the country, and there's so many bright, intelligent, forward-thinking professionals, and by getting all of us together in one room, we get to build this beautiful constellation of people that get to impact so many. So that's why we're going to lean really hard into this idea of connecting, making constellation, and how we connect is being bold enough to say that first hello to somebody that we don't know yet.
So it should be fun. If you think about a galaxy full of stars, and SLPs and audiologists are generally stars, this whole galaxy of stars, then coming home to connecting with people through your state association or through your team at work or wherever you make your connections forms this constellation. So we're excited to make the analogy. We're excited to talk about stars and how many stars we know and how we are all connected and find a fun way to do it at the same time. No pressure, right?
No pressure. I've definitely never done anything like this before. So I'll be putting on some extra deodorant that morning for sure. But the great thing is that we have access to a really supportive team at TSHA that really have allowed us to get really creative with how we want to structure the keynote. And so I'm super excited. And I think the best part is getting to share this experience with you, Judy. So thanks for being there.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, thanks. It's always fun to share the microphone or the stage with you, Natalie.
thank you. Thank you. Well, okay. So we have that. So let's talk a little bit about season 3 of Lead Speak. The season title was Culture by Design, which was really inspired by the book that we talked about in season 2, which was Unreasonable Hospitality. That was the book title. And so we want to take some of the key themes from that book and really bring it home to for us who work with students in schools. What does culture look like? What are the driving factors within culture? And how can we really leverage the place that we work in and the students that we work in order to make meaningful change within our profession? Now, Judy, I know you wanted to share some thoughts about some things have happened this season that we were not expecting with the use of the word culture.
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody's noticed that the any DEI initiatives in organizations or in universities or in public school districts or in education service centers, where we were in Houston, have had to make shifts in most states and across the country as DEI has been put into under a huge black cloud for some reason. So first of all, I want to set the context for this Judy Unplugged moment, because I was really noticing these shifts. And first, let me say that I love words. You can use the same word to mean different things, and you can use different words to mean the same thing. And in particular, the word that I'm thinking about is the word culture, because that's part of our season 3 title, Culture by Design. So what is culture? And apparently, there are people who associate culture with DEI initiatives, which frankly never entered my head when we were thinking about culture by design. So I've noticed some shifts. For example, I work at University of Texas, Dallas, and in the speech language hearing sciences department. And so we are accredited by ASHA's affiliated council for academic accreditation. And we just got some new standards that we have to adhere to. And one of those standards, maybe standard 3 point something, talks about removing DEI language and putting in person first, client first language into what we teach in our courses, the literature, the documents that we push out, the expectations, the instructions that we push out relative to clinical practice. Now, the shift itself is not bad. Moving to person first, client first language or client centered activity, that's not a bad thing. It was an okay shift in language, but the removal of the word culture hurts my heart, because if you think about culture, culture is a shared system of beliefs and values of a group of people. And because I love language, especially child language, I just can't envision how you can separate language from culture. Our language is part of our identity, our culture is part of our identity, and those things are intertwined. So it's been an interesting tension inducing activity for me to have to take the word culture out of what we do with Lead Speak. And we went to Houston to the Education Service Center for an awesome SpeechCon in, when was that? December, early December, maybe?
I think so. Or November.
Yeah, I think so.
We've
Lost
been so
time, lost
busy.
track. Anyway, we they that area, that service center for the Houston metro area, is responsible for supporting over 1,000 school-based speech-language pathologists, and half of them, 500 of them, showed up at this one-day conference. It was packed full of awesome keynote by one of our favorite people, Fong Lin Palafox, been a guest on Lead Speak. Go listen to her, especially the last 2 minutes of her episode. And then lots of great relevant sessions for school-based practitioners. We, because Region 4 is a state governmental agency, they're obligated to review our slide decks to look for disclosures, to look for acceptable language, all of that. And we got a kickback on one of our presentations about the 6 dimensions of leadership, where we had to remove the word culture from the slides. And I thought, okay. But that's what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about what we're talking about in season 3 of Lead Speak. We wanted to talk about culture by design, intentionality, planning, moving in a direction that builds a shared system of beliefs and values among school-based SLP teams. So we changed the word culture to community, right, Nat? And got the slides fixed and everything. But I just wanted to share this moment with you, a little bit of Judy Unplugged, to say that I'm a little frazzled by this because nobody took into account my view of where I was standing relative to looking at culture. When I think about culture, I'm thinking about specifically about how the team is working together, growing together, learning things together, and improving their practice for children. That is not the commonly accepted view of the word or definition of the word culture, which is somehow in the larger respect associated with DEI initiatives. So I just wanted to throw that out there and say, I don't think you can separate language from culture. I don't think you can separate culture from who you are as an individual and how you feel about yourself. And I really think that regardless of the word that we use, there was a lot going on in season 3 of Lead Speak about this intentionality for building cohesion, for building community, for building a client-centered and care-centered practice. So thanks for letting me spout off, Nat. And now we can move forward to our reflections on what we did in season 3.
Well, I think what you're talking about, Judy, really personifies or accentuates what we're trying to do through this podcast series, right? Which is this idea of we need to be able to lead, and how we do that and influence change. And how we do that is by educating others and bringing our perspective to the table and speaking up. Because if we don't, then how are we ever going to make things change or improve or be able to influence somebody's thinking and mindset beyond what they currently know? So I appreciate you sharing your perspective and your ideas on this, because I think it can show all of us that, like, this is what we need to do. We need to be able to talk really honestly and openly about the experiences that we're having, and to be able to talk about, like, you know, here's my lived experience with this. This is my understanding of that. Yours my is different, and let me tell you why I'm coming to this conclusion, right? So you get to expand other people's perspectives. And as a leader, I mean, that's the crux of it, right? Like, that's the foundation of it all, is being able to say, like, hey, you think that way, I'm coming about it this way. How do we move closer together? How do we move the
Mhm.
ball forward for the betterment of the people that we serve and the people that we lead? So thank you for sharing that. I do know. So let's talk about season 3 of Lead Speak. I mean, we had some really phenomenal guests come and share their ideas and their passions with us. So let's roll right into it. Judy, where do you want to start with this? We have so many notes.
I know we have a lot of notes and a lot of thoughts. Maybe I'll start at the end, and that is at the end of each episode, you ask our guests for one word that depicts leadership for them, and you only give them one word. So it's very poignant and telling in terms of what they tell us. And so I have those written down in the order of our episodes. And the one word descriptions of leadership are reflection, inspiration, perspective, advocacy, and humility. And I think that's a great place to start and end in terms of season 3. There were themes that we heard several of the guests talking about. Everybody talked about connection and relationship and caring in their own way on the topic that we had given them to share with us about. But everybody talked about caring and being client centered, student centered in and SLP centered in their leadership. And we also heard a lot about data. We heard some things about interprofessional practice. And so, I don't know, Nat, pick a theme and we'll go for it and just kind of weave through the season.
So for me, what really kind of struck me overall for everybody was this idea of being intentional. So the word intentionality for me kept on coming up this whole season, where each of our guests had some really specific examples of how they purposely chose the way they were going to go, right? It didn't really happen randomly. It didn't really happen per chance. It was a choice that they made, and then they were able to create a path moving forward. And I think that what I learned this season is that culture has to be done with intention. It's not something where you could just like rock up at work and be like, I want my team to be practicing at the top of their license, right? Like there you need to be very thoughtful about like what that looks like, what does that mean for you, what does that mean for them? How does that operate in the systems that you're living in right now, right? It's just not something that you can kind of whip up together and be like, ta-da, like, we're now practicing at the top of our license, right? So like for example, I was super jazzed that we got to talk to Rachel, the PTSD SLP, as our very first episode of the season, right? And Rachel is known nationally and internationally as an SLP who is so incredibly thoughtful and so can explain these concepts of trauma informed practice and put it through the lens of speech pathology in school systems, which is like super exciting. And I really liked how she kind of left us with like 3 kind of main ideas that kind of link back to like intentionality. So, one, she talked about how the idea of transparency and the act of transparency between whoever is leading and the team is so critical to make sure that we are being open and we are reducing any kind of uncertainty around decision making and creating that path forward and being very choosing to be transparent in the most in the biggest way possible whenever it's possible. The second thing she talked about was offering choices. So, as a leader, being very intentional as far as offering choices whenever you can, so that your team can feel a level of control and ownership in the ways that they move forward. And then the last thing, she talked about being very cognizant and also understanding the ripple effects that come from your decisions and the ripple effects that come from experiencing traumatic moments in life. And I think being very intentional and choosing to take time to really understand those wide ripple effects can not only benefit like your relationship as the leader to the people that you serve, but then also like understand like how that is going to impact the students that you work with and the colleagues you share space with. So, love listening to Rachel's stories. I think she brought a lot for us to consider.
Yeah, she also gave a tip for new leaders. So if you're a new leader, she talked about in that area of having choice, choice, losing power can cause trauma, is one of the triggers for trauma. And she talked about in school systems, there's lots of turnover in leadership in some school districts. There aren't very many school districts around that just have a steady leadership team at all levels. And so, if you are a new leader or if you have a new leader that you report to, one of the things that can prevent trauma is to listen more and give fewer directives. That
Mm,
reducing choice, not listening, giving orders, giving directives, saying, we're going to do this way this year without regard for the past, all of that can cause trauma. And so, as a
yeah.
very practical tip, listen more, build relationships and trust before you start putting your initiatives in place.
Yeah.
I thought
That
it
makes
was good,
sense.
really good.
That was really, really good. In our second episode, we had Hallie Sherman from Speech Time Fun join in. And for me, when I listen back to her episode and I think about the theme of intentionality, I just really appreciate her advice in regards to data collection, right? So, data collection is just data collection, and when you think about like what is actual like helpful information, is thinking about how we're looking for meaningful communication growth. So as an act of intentionality as a leader, when I'm coaching my team, when I'm bringing them resources to continue their development for data collection and data analysis, as a leader, I really have to be intentional to think like, am I trying to teach my team how to take percentage accuracy all the time, right? Is that the sole mode of data collection that I'm going to champion for my team? Or am I going to provide them with training to consider a multitude of ways in which data can bring together or can capture the growth that our students are experiencing. And that to me is very intentional, because as a leader of the team, hopefully you have the capacity to bring in professional development for your team. And so looking for people to come in that can talk about things like qualitative data versus quantitative data, working with middle school and high school students. What does data look like for those folks that we're working on kind of like more global communication skills versus kind of skills that can be measured with percent accuracy. I just really like that Hallie was really championing to make sure that we're intentionally bringing in really great folks for our teams.
Yeah, she said connection over data collection, connection over data collection, which uh, Natalie's going to make into a T-shirt for all of us.
Ah.
But she really talked about, with intentionality about build your relationships first. Spend that 2 to 5 minutes at the beginning and the end of every session in not SLP mode, just person to person mode. Remember what students have told you and circle back to it, even if you're taking notes in the margins of your data collection sheet or on your phone or whatever. So remember what your students have told you that's important to them and circle back to that. Ask them how things went. Ask them if their team made the district playoffs or whatever. If they got to go to the movie they were looking forward to seeing, whatever, connection over data collection. And then she also talked about, which I thought was huge for us, very compulsive SLPs, is that data collection is really testing. It's not teaching. If you think about a
Mm.
classroom, a good classroom has some formative assessment that informs where to start and where to go in terms of the instruction, and then summative assessment to see if students got it. And then there's this whole space in between formative and summative that is your teaching space. And we forget to stretch out our teaching space when data is not that important. You're teaching. You don't expect them to have the skill. You don't expect after one session for them to be able to carry it over into a non-academic area in the school. You, even if that's what your goal says, and the goals are annual goals, and she talked about this quite a bit, is that it's an annual goal. So why are we measuring it every session? So yeah, really good talk. But she starts and ends with her connections with students, especially she loves teens. And it was just really fun to talk to her and all of the cool things that she's done with the speech retreat and the coffee time fun and speech time fun. And this lady likes to have fun when she's doing
She
her advocacy
does.
work.
She does. And a thank you to Hallie for inviting Lead Speak to her own podcast series. That was a super cool experience. So, yay for that. So, episode 3, we had Dr. Megan Brett Hamilton, who is a speech language pathologist. She's a professor. She has the great opportunity of working and leading at ASHA, which is super cool. And when it comes to intentionality, what I heard from Megan Brett was this concept of being very thoughtful about the relational aspect of leadership, right? So making those choices in her day-to-day life where she has the ability to build those relationships with the people that she spends time with. And that can look like having check-ins with your folks to see how they're doing beyond the four walls of their office, getting to know who lives at home, what kind of TV shows are they watching, right? So you get to experience and get to be much more close to their life. And so over time, you get to know their hopes and their abilities and where they might need extra support. And then building on that so that when you do come to a time and space where there might be a disagreement, there might be a misalignment of the vision moving forward, you have that really positive relationship, and then you can lean on that to move the ball forward. And that is, again, something that as a leader or a person who is wanting to get into a leadership position, that's something that you have to choose every day. And it's not something you could just show up to work one day and be like, I'm going to be a relational leader all of a sudden, right? It's something you have to build over time and something that you have to choose time and time again. And so I just really appreciated her words of wisdom.
Yeah, Megan Brett has done a variety of different things, 10 years in Brooklyn Public Schools at the beginning of her career, as well as professor and now chief staff officer. She helped us know how to do a podcast. She's done a variety of things, but she described the common thread for her as her purpose, her why is helping people understand people through communication. And that communication is this interaction that's back and forth that connects people. So for her, it's all about connection and building rapport first, and then just remembering the that everybody brings something valuable and possibly different to the table. So the leader's job is to find out what all those different valuable things are around the table and build a broader perspective so everybody can see each other's strengths and value that they bring to the table and share in the perspective and lead to a better outcome. And it's always with her a people outcome. So people understanding people through communication was her deal. Her tip in terms of just an actionable item as a leader was when you have tense moments where people really disagree is to separate the issue from the person so that you're not making or absorbing personal attacks. It's about the work, it's about the problem, it's about the issue, not about the person. And I thought that was really, really valuable information for leaders to absorb, is that separate the issue from the person so that we don't get into a cycle of blaming and shaming in subtle ways or sarcasm, use of sarcasm or use of put down humor, that it's the issue, not the person, and everybody brings value. So it was really fun talking to Megan Brett, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that that's like a really hard skill to acquire over time. That I definitely, that's something that I continue to try to grow in, especially if you're feeling super passionate about a topic, or you feel like this is your idea, and so you want to be able to like get everybody on board with it and super psyched about it. And so coming back to like when you are receiving that feedback or that criticism, being able to separate like the project from yourself. Uh, Tough skill to do. So definitely go back to that episode to listen to it, because she does have so many great ideas of how to do that. For episode 4, we had Nathalie Crow. And what I really loved about Nathalie Crow and kind of spent hours talking to her about was her approach to professional development through professional learning communities that she's established. And you think about like intentionality. Like if you listen to her episode, you can see that she's been putting years of work into developing these systems within her team's professional learning communities, so that it not only benefits the SLPs themselves, right? But it also has a huge ripple effect beyond the speech therapy department in her school district, which is like great, because then people get to know you for the amazing work that you can do as a speech language pathologist, but also how you can affect positive student outcomes beyond your therapy room. So I would definitely go back to that episode if this is an area that you can see yourself really growing in 2016 and beyond. She offers some really tried and true ideas on how to make those meetings where you have SLPs coming together to develop an idea, develop a project, like how to do that very efficiently, and to produce some really good outcomes. What do you think, Judy?
Yeah, I just really enjoyed Natalie's episode on the podcast, and she has spent her time in a leadership position doing two things. One is providing more supports for SLPs, because when she was first placed in this position, those were her marching orders from both SLPs and from her leadership, which was SLPs don't feel supported, nobody knows, nobody answers their questions, nobody helps them. So providing more SLP support and the infrastructure that she has created through designing and broadcasting the role of the SLP in her school district so that everybody understands it, and everybody, SLPs, regardless of amount of years in the job, are responsible for it and accountable for it. So that led to a defined role, led to then a really SLP customized appraisal system that includes excellence in clinical practice. So I was happy with that. The other thing that she really wanted to uh, hone in on and design is a workload system, and they have it going on in a large suburban school district relative to workload. So if you're a leader looking for ideas about creating systems that support SLPs as well as tackling this workload issue, listen to that episode and think about, try to absorb the infrastructure that she has built. But beyond that, the culture that she's been able to create through the shared values. So she defines culture, or she says culture is the result of the decisions that are made based on your values, your defined values. So it's very, lots to think about in that episode, lots to think about.
And I think like when we reflect back on the whole season, you think about like, selecting your values and then kind of picking how you're going to approach that year based on your values. I think somebody that really exemplified that was our very last guest for the season, which was Rachel Powell, right? And Rachel spoke at length about using data. So data from our speech therapy work that we're doing with our students, and making it expand beyond our therapy rooms, and perhaps therapy closets. So moving from just focusing on communication supports, but really expanding that application into academic outcomes. Right. So she has a super cool background with her love and passion of reading, intervention, the, her passion for in academic intervention, that kind of thing. And she's able to marry together the speech language pathology world, but also kind of like that tier one, tier two intervention set. And so I just really appreciated how she has been able to use and extrapolate all this information to make some really big changes in how things are done at her school district when it comes to supporting students, right? We're like really expanding the reach and the capacity, so that their students can do better in reading outcomes, can do better in communication outcomes. And then she even went one step further with her data and took it at the legislative level, and was able to make some really great impact and changes legislatively, so that it can come back down to the SLPs that she support, so that they can have a better time doing the job that they need to. So I just, when I think about intentionality, all those steps, Rachel had to choose to do that, and build processes along the way so that the ball could keep on moving forward for her and her team.
Yeah, and she is ever expanding her reach or her scope of influence because she's now director of curriculum and instruction in her school district. So, yay for Rachel, and we really want to keep talking to her and really keep talking to all the guests. One of the things that we haven't really mentioned so far that several of our guests in season 3 talked about is interprofessional practice and how we need to get out of silos and realize that the students that we're working with have other things going on. So, whether it is that we need to be aware of trauma informed care, that's a preventive measure, and get to know psychologists and social workers in the workplace, or whether it's literacy and language and working with reading specialists and classroom teachers. We just need to broaden what we do because the child is not siloed, it's a whole child. So um, that's what we're looking forward to, I think, in season 4 is talking about interprofessional practice as it is successful and evidenced in school practice, in school settings. So we want to delve into that and talk about some things that have worked, especially in the area of dyslexia and reading. And really looking forward to that. But I think, Nathalie, we have to get through the onstage moment at the keynote session at the TSHA convention before we move to season 4. What do you think?
Are you saying first things first,
Oh
Judy?
my God.
It's gonna be great. The first thing that comes to mind, honestly, when I think about interprofessional practice is, have you said hello yet to that person?
Yeah.
Right? Do you even know who that person is on your campus? And do they know who you are? And so, if you have the ability to come to Texas in February for the State Association TSHA's annual convention, we'd love to see you. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to say hello and how to introduce yourself, so that that first hello can lead to really awesome changes and opportunities for you, maybe as a professional. You're looking for professional connections for new opportunities or new partnerships and collaborations. Saying that first hello can open doors for your students to have access to things that you can't facilitate right now. That first hello can give you access to creative options, can help you kind of think through sticky spots where you feel stuck. And so maybe somebody else has already lived that life and can tell you, like, hey, I've already done this. This didn't work. Don't do that. But like perhaps look at this, right? And so I'm super jazzed about, talking on stage with a lot of people about saying hello and then giving everybody some really practical tips on it, like how you go about that in a post COVID social distancing world, in a world where we're still trying to figure out the balance when it comes to like social media and like what does saying hello virtually mean and what does that look like versus like in person hello, like just a lot of different things. And what does it mean if you're a person where you're like, I'm an introvert and saying hello to a stranger is just not something I look forward to every day. How do we think through that and work through that? So I'm super jazzed. Well, Judy, I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday with
Thank
your
you.
family and your loved ones. I want to extend the same
You
thing
as
to
well.
our listeners. And if you haven't done it yet, we would love for you to like and follow our podcast. So when the first episode of season 4 drops, it'll be ready for you to hear.
Absolutely. We look forward to more conversations coming up in 2026.